brought to us by the great Brian Tyler Cohen. I'd like to talk about a new change that looks like it's going to make it a little bit easier to win back the House in 24, which is part of the greater game plan. If we really, really want to change this country, the major goal we should be striving for right now is winning the House, Senate, and White House in 2024 for the Democrats. After that, our work isn't even going to be over. Hopefully, we will have a progressive House. Maybe we'll have a progressive Senate. It's unlikely. But we'll be then doing the work of convincing politicians to do as we say and bothering them all the time. But none of that is going to be worth it unless we get the blue House, Senate, and White House. Here's why that might be easier than it was, let's say, last week.
Democracy Watch. I'm joined by my co-host, voting rights attorney Mark Elias. So, Mark, we've spoken about new black opportunity districts likely being drawn in Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, Texas, and South Carolina. Now it looks like we have news out of Tennessee. Can you speak on the new lawsuit that was just filed?
Yeah, new lawsuit in Tennessee by a bunch of civil rights organizations, basically saying that the Republican legislature violated the Constitution when it divvied up Davidson County, which is Nashville, into 3 congressional districts. It had previously been in 1. The net effect of that was to reduce the opportunity of black voters and citizens to be able to elect their candidate of choice. So a very important lawsuit, and one that we're definitely going to want to watch.
So is this case being litigated then along the same lines as Alabama and Louisiana by using Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act?
No, so this is being litigated under the U.S. Constitution. So if you think of, in one category, you have Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas, where basically the claim is that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act requires the creation of a majority-minority district in order to allow minorities an equal opportunity to elect their candidate of choice. Okay, that's a statutory right under the Voting Rights Act of 1964. There's a second line of cases, though, under the U.S. Constitution, under the 14th Amendment, that says basically you can't discriminate against voters based on race by either cracking them or packing them. And that is what the claim is in Tennessee, is that essentially Republican elected officials, the legislature, knowingly divvied up Black voters into a variety of congressional districts and a couple of state legislative districts in a way to diminish their ability to elect candidates of choice. And that violates the U.S. Constitution.
And is that the 14th Amendment to the Constitution?
It's the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. It's the same basic legal theory as what we saw in the South Carolina case we've talked about before, which is going to be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Okay, now what are the implications for Tennessee in terms of seeing that state being ordered to draw new, fairer maps?
So look, if the plaintiffs prevail here, and I think they have a really good chance. I mean, one of the sort of sidelights to all of this is that for all of the talk last term about Allen v. Milligan and Section 2 and the hostility of conservative courts, sometimes to the Voting Rights Act, although we won that case in the Supreme Court. These constitutional challenges actually historically have attracted conservative justices and judges. So conservative justices and judges have typically not wanted to allow state legislatures to divide up people based on race in the way in which alleged here in Tennessee. So if this case prevails, then you would see a new map drawn and almost certainly Nashville reunited, and that would create a district which would be much more heavily African-American and much more Democratic.
Is there any...
So just to clarify, the House is barely held by Republicans right now. It probably wouldn't be if they hadn't cheated. Just to be clear, they had to create Republican districts where there were none and shouldn't be any. They had to chop up the districts in such a way that they could squeeze a couple of House seats. Again, because Republicans cannot win a fair fight. They cheat because they're weak. I mean, it's really that simple. They're too weak to win without starting to run 10 seconds before the starting gun goes off. Now, we've begun to enter into the era where we're not going to put up with that anymore. I don't know why we put up with it for, let me just check, the entire history of the United States, at least with conservatives. But hell, we're through with that. There are cases now in court which are going to be damned near impossible for Republicans to win. That will restore some of these districts back to where they should be. But just to be clear, right now, a lot of the nonsense that we have to put up with, you know, when we hear, let's say, about fetuses being burned to generate electricity for DC, those kinds of lies we are hearing because these liars cheated and relied on gerrymandering, which they had good reason to know would be overturned in court. In other words, would be found to be not following the rules. They relied on gerrymandering to get the seats that they got. So when they are in 2024, after showing their asses for years to the American people, when they are up for re-election in new districts, proper districts, we can expect a lot of them to get booted out. But don't forget, we're wearing the boots. We still got to do it. Let's check out the details.
Reason to believe that the court would reject this lawsuit?
Look, you never know what a court is going to do, particularly before it hears the evidence. But I think that this is like I said, this is a very strong claim. There really isn't a neutral argument as to why you would take Nashville and divide it into 3 congressional districts. Right. There's sometimes we use this phrase, traditional redistricting criteria, right? Traditional redistricting criteria, like you try to keep counties together, you try to keep communities of interest together. Well, this doesn't do any of that. This actually divides Davidson County, it divides Nashville, it divides communities of interest, and it heavily fractures the Black community in that county in a way that, to me, looks like it transgresses the 14th Amendment.
Regardless of which way this goes, do you believe that this will be resolved at least before the 2024 election?
Absolutely. Yeah, this case will go to a 3-judge federal court, which hears these cases. Sometimes when we talk about 3-judge panels. Sometimes we talk about 1-judge panels. This will be a 3-judge panel, and those panels typically move very, very quickly. And I expect this case, we will likely get at least resolution on a temporary basis. In other words, resolution for 2024, I expect we'll get certainly before the end of the year.
Now, I started off by reading like half a dozen states where we're expecting new maps to be drawn. Are there any other states where we should expect more lawsuits challenging the current congressional maps?
Yeah, so, you mentioned Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, I put in one bucket. Those all sort of, to me, follow the Allen v. Milligan line. I expect we'll have new maps in certainly in Alabama and Louisiana, and Georgia goes to trial this fall. I expect similar outcome there. My law firm's involved in all 3 cases. We've talked a lot recently and read in the news a lot about Florida. That case is now a state case that my firm is involved in, is now focused on 1 congressional district. This is the
5th.
Former district, Florida 5, held by Representative Al Lawson. I expect that will get resolved this year. Texas, a little bit longer time frame, but could be resolved by the end of this year, hopefully. And then you didn't mention New York. There's a big battle brewing in New York about whether or not the map that was drawn by a Republican judge's special master for the 2022 election, whether that map should be in place for the entire decade, or as the intermediate court in New York has ruled, the bipartisan independent redistricting commission in New York should have to meet its constitutional obligation of presenting the legislature with another redistricting map. My firm won that case in the intermediate court.
Truly, I find all of this interesting, but beyond the understanding that there are multiple districts around this country, and in particular, the conversation being triggered by an upcoming case in Tennessee, I don't think it's necessary to add a whole hell of a lot, because I want to talk about what you can do about it. Let's jump to that right now. No offense to Mark Elias or Brian Tyler Cohen, and if you want to see the whole thing, don't worry, the link to the clip's in the description. Go check it out. But here's what you can do. If you find yourself in one of these districts, or even near one of these districts, if you possibly can, volunteer to help. The link's in the description for that particular county, the Democratic Party. If you click on that link, it'll take you to a page wherein you can list the things you think you'd be good at. Knocking on doors, writing emails, writing letters, so on, so forth. It's a hell of a thing, driving people, by the way, to the polls. It's a mighty daunting thing. It's scary, at least to me, to do something like that. But if you want to absolutely slam home a victory for decency, you can do few things that are more important than volunteering in that district for the Democratic Party. You will be supporting the party of Justin Pearson, of Justin Jones. And if you get, and Gloria Johnson, let's not forget the sister was there too. And if you get involved, and I'm offering this as a carrot, because I know the stick is what happens if we lose? Oh boy. If you get involved, there is a tiny chance that you will make me more jealous than anyone else on earth as you meet these folks. As you meet, I'm sorry, I was looking at a rather important message. As you meet these folks, because I don't see you working in that area, putting in the hours without meeting the candidates involved, and that should include the big names in Tennessee Democratic politics, and there ain't none bigger than those three right now. Consider getting involved.